Welcome to the Bariatric Nutrition Coach Podcast, where we empower you with weight loss surgery, nutrition knowledge, mindset advice, and inspiration so you succeed in your weight and health journey. I'm your host, Jane Stoltz, and I am a bariatric dietitian who has helped over 1,300 people on their weight loss surgery journeys. I'm also a solo mum, lover of long walks while listening to podcasts, partial to a glass of wine, and the ocean is my happy place. Join me as I dive deep into bariatric nutrition and lifestyle topics and deliver them to you in bite-sized, palatable episodes every Monday. Now let's go. Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Bariatric Nutrition Coach Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. And today I'm going to talk all about weight loss surgery foundation eating habits. And this is the name I've given to the cluster of eating habits that are so important to practice after having bariatric surgery. But before I get into this week's episode, I just want to give a big shout out to all of you, my listeners. Thank you so much. We've recently reached the 20,000 downloads, which is so exciting because I haven't been doing my podcast very long. I certainly didn't grow up with a lot of technology in my life, being over 50. And I feel really proud that I have been able to navigate the tech and get a podcast out there that people are finding of value. And it's because of you that I keep doing my podcast. I'm getting some wonderful feedback and support, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. So let's dive into this episode. And I could talk all day about foundation eating habits after weight loss surgery. It's something I'm really passionate about. I know many people see dietitians as telling you, okay, what you should eat in how much you should eat. That's what you get from a dietitian. But actually, there's so much more work that we do with our clients. And in the area of bariatric surgery, this is so important. I do work with clients pre-surgery to start building these habits, but definitely post-surgery. They are so important. It's not just what you eat, it's also how you eat. And I talk a lot about this in my social media. I'm really passionate about it. And part of the challenges that come up after surgery is a behavior change. Behavior change is hard. It doesn't happen overnight. And often you need support to change behaviors in a way that's going to suit you in your lifestyle and also at the speed that's going to suit you. It is not expected that overnight, your tummy changes overnight, your GI tract changes overnight, but your brain doesn't. It takes time. I'm going to share with you now and talk about the 5 weight loss surgery foundation eating habits that I coach my clients on every day because they are so impactful. They are so important. They're important in the early days. They're important in the long term. They help you get the best results out of your surgery, and they will also help you keep those results. I also call them the weight loss surgery success eating habits because they are really key for success. So I'm going to go through them one by one, and I'm going to explain why they are so important. Number 1 is not going to be a surprise because most bariatric centres give this advice to their patients post-bariatric surgery, and it is to not drink with your meals, to leave a space of time on either side of your eating your meals and not drink fluids. Now, I say generally 15 minutes before eating, stop drinking, and wait 30 minutes after. So that's kind of 15 and 30. Other people will say they've been told 30-30. For me, it is not that important exactly how many minutes. We want to have a bit of a buffer on either side. And there's really 2 key reasons why it's recommended that you don't drink fluids with your food. One is that when you drink with your food, you are filling your tummy up at the same time. you can get some feedback, stretching of the stomach walls, feedback that you've had enough, and you can fill up, I'm using little air quotes, fill up too early, and you're not going to get adequate protein in at that meal. So that's number one reason why we recommend not drinking on either side and with your meals. Number two is that your stomach wants the food contents to be at a certain consistency before it releases it from your stomach into your intestines. Now, if you've had a vertical sleeve gastrectomy, you have still got your pyloric sphincter in place. And our sphincters are really smart. And it's at the end of your tummy, and it releases the contents of your tummy from your tummy into your duodenum when it gets to a certain consistency. So like a runny kind of fluid consistency. When you're putting fluid in with your foods are going to get to that consistency faster and be released from your tummy faster. And what that means is you're not going to get that full satiety, that length of satiety from that meal that you could if you don't drink with it. If you've had a bypass like a Roux wine, you've lost your sphincter, you've got a pouch, it's still even more important not to drink with your meals because it will flush that food out of your tummy into your intestines. So it's a very challenging habit for many people who are used to drinking with their meals. And I work a lot with my clients of really building the rhythm into their day and getting into the habit of not drinking with their meals because it is so important. So that's number one. Number two is eating slowly. This is a habit that is so important and so impactful when you do it. And I'm going to talk about what this looks like. And I like to say you don't need a degree to understand eating slowly. You don't need to be a rocket surgeon. And I know I've just kind of made that up, rocket scientist and all of that. But it is very challenging to do. So it's easy to understand, challenging to do. What am I talking about? Small bites, chewing well, and eating at a really slow pace. And I don't necessarily prescribe how slow, whether it be seconds or how long or how many chews between meals, because I find my clients, as we slow down, we work out what the pace is that's right for them. When I had my practice under the roof of a very busy bariatric centre, and I would see 8 to 10 patients a day who were pre or post surgery for many years, I would be talking to them, for example, about their pace of eating. And I would say, pre-surgery, did you eat quickly or did you eat slowly? And I'd say 8 out of 10 said pre-surgery they would eat quickly. And if they said that they didn't know or they thought they were normal, their partner or their friend sitting beside them would say, no, they ate quickly. Eating quickly doesn't allow your body to register when you've had enough, doesn't allow your body to pick up when you've reached that satisfied point, which I'll be talking about next, and you're more likely to overeat. And then after surgery, my patients who were fast eaters would say, Jane, I'm eating so much slower than I used to, but I still feel like I'm eating too quickly. My body is not happy. I'm not feeling comfortable. I've eaten too much. And that is that you're eating slower, but not slow enough. We want time to chew. We want time to sit between bites. We want time for our body to register when you've eaten enough. And that leads me to the next habit. So we've talked about not drinking on either side of meals, 2, eating slowly. I've put number 3 as its own habit because it's something I really focus on a lot with my clients. Stopping eating when satisfied or if 30 minutes comes around. So after surgery, yes, your hunger and fullness hormones change. You don't have that same desire to eat. For most people, it drops right down or goes away quite a lot. Also, not that same desire to drink. And that's a challenge. That is definitely a challenge. But even from week 3, I want my clients to start practicing listening to their body. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, your body is not talking to you in the same way as it did before surgery. It can be whispering to you, And another example is it can be talking to you in a different language. Sensations are different, they're subtle. You feel them in different parts of the body. But over that first year, 18 months, they really evolve. And so that practice of learning and checking in with the body also evolves, and you start getting to know your body better, you start to hear it more. When we're babies, we start eating that mashed up pureed food. Think the early days after your bariatric surgery, that food. You give a baby some food, and when they've had enough, they push the spoon away. That's how we're born, and we lose that ability, we lose that practice of listening to our body. So eating slowly is super important because it gives us time to recognize when we're satisfied. And I love the word satisfied. I use it all the time. And I encourage you to inquire what satisfied means for you. This is physically satisfied. You may in a meal feel physically satisfied, but still emotionally feel hungry. And that is really great thing to recognize, because then we need to work on that emotional hunger. We need to work through meeting that emotional hunger, because often they get very entangled. And what I mean is it's hard to identify what's physical hunger and what's emotional hunger. So I do a lot of work with my clients on really identifying what's that point of being satisfied. And satisfied is not full. Satisfied is, I've had enough food, I feel comfortable, I could eat a little bit more, but I'm okay, because I know in a short period of time I'm going to be able to eat again. So satisfied is a wonderful word. It's a wonderful place to explore, and it's a wonderful place to be, because when we work on that emotional hunger and that drops down, it can really help not drive that overeating. And I've also put in this foundation habit if 30 minutes comes around, because we want our meals to be discreet. We don't want them to go on and on and on. And what I mean by that is it's very common in those early days for me to start working with somebody and they are sitting with a meal 45 minutes an hour, trying to get everything in because they want to reach their protein goals. And what happens is that turns into a grazing eating pattern, and that meal then gets closer to that other meal, and then they don't have the appetite to start the next meal, and everything goes out of whack. So there are ways in those early medium days when you don't have that appetite to be able to get adequate in 30 minutes, and we work with that. I work with my clients around that for them to be able to comfortably get in their protein, and then over time you can eat more. But we want 30 minutes to be the max. Small bites, chew well, eat slowly, stop when you're satisfied or if 30 minutes comes around. So let's now talk about the weight loss surgery foundation eating habit number 4, and that is protein bites ratio. You will have heard me talk about this if you have listened to my social media and possibly in other podcast episodes, but I want to go through it in detail today. When I had my business located under the roof of a very busy bariatric centre and I was seeing lots and lots of patients after having bariatric surgery, I noticed that when people were given a certain amount of food to eat, there were a lot of downfalls to that way of educating and guiding clients in their bariatric journey. I found some people coped with that amount of food, other people didn't. People have different amounts of food that they consume. Some people were forcing food down and then food was coming up. People were sitting on their meals and eating their meals over an hour and a half to try and reach their protein goals. And a lot of the meals were just protein in those early to medium days. And we want to get other flavors in. We want to get some foods in with fiber, even from, say, week 3 after surgery, when you start, depending on your bariatric centre's guidelines. It does vary from centre to centre, but roughly when you're starting that soft food stage, we're really wanting to start also some regular meals. We want to start building not only just protein, but some other foods as well. So individuals have different amounts of food that you can comfortably eat. And I wanted from early days, people that have had their surgery to really eat in line with their body and their level of comfort, because it links into what I've been talking about, listening to the body, honoring the body, and building on their intake, because it does increase over time. So the protein bites ratio is a way of eating that means you don't have to weigh your food. It's around eating in line with and practicing. It goes in with this cluster of eating habits. So you prioritize protein but get some of those other foods. So under 1 year from surgery, or when you can comfortably eat adequate protein and reach your protein goals, I suggest a 3-to-1 ratio. 3 bites of protein, lean protein, roughly, to 1 bite of other. And other are whole grains, vegetables, and fruits. So when you plate your meal up, you plate roughly in those ratios. 3 bites of protein to 1 bite of other. 3 bites of scrambled egg to 1 bite of avocado. 3 bites of soft chicken to 1 bite of pumpkin. You eat roughly in those ratios, small bites, chew well, eat slowly, things fall into place. As you can eat more, you progress and you get closer to a year, you can eat comfortably your protein, we can move to 2-to-1. 2 bites of protein to 1 bite of other. We can get more of those other foods in, those foods that give us more fiber, more variety, more crunch, more texture in our diet. So the protein bites ratio is a simple way of eating, plating up and eating roughly. That means you don't have to weigh your food and count your macros, because when you eat in these ratios, things fall into place. Do you need to eat exactly in these ratios all the time? No. You can plate up roughly in those ratios and then mix your foods together, because often we have mixed meals. We have stir fries and casseroles and foods that are mixed together. It's not necessarily them all being separated on a plate like a 4-year-old, that's my joke, a 4-year-old would like, at the stage where children may have different foods on the plate and they don't want them to touch. I don't think it's just mine. But yeah, so you can mix your food up, and that's a way of you easily being able to eat out, being going to a friend's place for dinner, or just plating your food up and not feeling like you have to weigh it all the time. And I know this works because for years I educated my clients to eat in this way. They came back in to see me in my office, and I would plug their dietary recalls into a food analysis program. That would give me a huge amount of data. But what I was looking at was really key things: energy intake, macro profile, reaching proteins, carbs and fat. The macros fall into place, and also energy intake falls into place when you follow this eating habit along with those other eating habits, because when you stop when you're satisfied, you're less likely to be overeating. So that is number 4, my protein bites ratio. If you are in the weight loss phase after your bariatric surgery, well, listen up, as I have a wonderful resource you are going to love. And yes, it's free. It's called Supercharge Your Weight Loss Surgery Success Starter Kit. It's a 3-day mini course where I take you through the steps to supercharge your weight loss. You will become clear on what habits are taking you out of your weight loss zone, and which are the key habits you personally need to foster to move back into where you want to be, to weight loss. Sound good? If yes, grab your free resource. The link is in the show notes. Number 5, if you listen to me on social media and you've listened to me enough, I do love regular meals. Getting a great eating structure, getting that regular eating pattern or a way of eating regular meals, it really will depend, the way you approach this, it will depend on your lifestyle, your work situation, and what works best for you as a person. Some people are just a lot more structured than others, but regular eating is super important. 1, it helps you reach your protein goals. When we have gaps between our eating and we're not snacking and grazing and having long snacky meals, you get space to drink fluid, and that helps you reach your fluid goals. When you eat regular meals, it helps you regulate your appetite. Your body loves to be fed regularly. You can't eat enough after weight loss surgery to sustain you for hours and hours and hours. You need to eat regular small meals. So I'm so passionate about that. And that's what I do with my clients. I help them embed these habits personally for them in their individual lives, because everyone is different. And it's one thing to be told, well, go and do this. It's another thing to go and do it. And that's why I call myself a coach, because I work very closely with my clients. The way my program is set up is very much around holding your hand and supporting you one step of the way. I don't give my clients a piece of paper and say, see you in 2 weeks. I step people through the steps that they need to take personally to work towards getting great habits in place and great food choices in place. And individually, when we start working together, we do a period of observation and then together decide, what are we going to work on first? What are we going to work on second? It is not about doing everything at once and expecting ourselves to have this in 3 weeks or be perfect. And where we start working for one person is very different to where we start working for another person. And that is really important, because there is no one size fits all. Are there habits associated with weight loss success? Yes, there are. Are there better food choices overall? Yes, there are. But it's about finding that path and finding the way that's going to suit you best, because we are looking for behavior change that's going to stay, behavior change that is going to be something that really you can embrace and embed in your life. And it may look slightly different to someone else. It is not about everyone needs to look the same or do the same thing. Let me recap the 5 Weight Loss Surgery Foundation eating habits that I have gone through today. Number 1 is not to drink on either side and with your meals. Number 2 is eating slowly, and that's small bites, chewing well, and eating slowly enough for your body to be happy. And your body will eat when you're eating slow enough. Number 3 is to stop eating when you're satisfied or if 30 minutes comes around. Number 4 is my protein bites ratio. And number 5 is having regular meals throughout the day. So thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. Really love and appreciate the comments and the support I'm getting about my podcast, and I really hope you find value. If you do find value in my podcast, I would love you to share my podcast with anyone or everyone that you feel would also find value in my podcast. I don't formally advertise my podcast. It's just growing organically. So I would love you to share my podcast, suggest it to people. If you look at the top of an episode and also the main screen of the podcast, you'll see 3 dots, and you can click on that and find share podcast. Also, if you wanted to share my podcast to your social media following, I would love that. Please tag me, and I will come back here in my podcast and I will give you a personal shout out and a personal thank you for sharing my podcast. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your support, and I really look forward to being, back in your ears next week. Bye for now.